Alright, so I've got the boiler front off the 6184 here, and I'm in the process of pulling out the old Sooth popper smoke unit and pulling these lights out of the pulling the lamps out of the class lights here. I'm gonna try to 3D print some lenses for these guys. Should be fun. I've got that clear PLA loaded up now. I used to fill these, you know, with putty or whatever, and then I would try to use that gallery glass stuff. Let's see if I can find it. Somewhere in here I have gallery glass, and I used to use that a lot. Oh yeah, here it is. But it's mostly useful now, I think, for setting lenses. I used to try to fill with it, but it would always kind of concave on me. So I'm gonna try to utilize the old ender here and see if I can make some nice, classy lenses for these guys. I also gotta straighten that one. I don't know what happened to it. And then maybe I'll come up with some boiler plugs, some smoke box plugs for these holes here. Right now I'm just trying to free up the wiring. So from my measurements, looks like they got 1.2 volts going to the class light lamps and about 6 volts going to this lamp. But that thing is really, really bright. I may try to dim that down a little bit. Alright, my idea of 3D printing some lenses for these things seemed to work out pretty good. That's it without. There's one in there, and I just got this clear PLA I wanted to play with, and that's what it looks like coming out of the printer. So just trim it up with an X-Acto and just pop it right in there. So I think that's better than trying to do what I used to do. Pretty cool. I kind of undersized them about 0.1 millimeter. They're about 2 millimeters wide and three tall. You know, they're kind of oval. They weren't too difficult to sketch up in Tinkercad. In the past, I was trying to buy these little class lamp lenses. Lionel makes a few different sizes, you know, from their customer support site. But I never had much luck trying to get these to fit in third rail stuff. So I guess the 3D printed solution is going to be pretty cool. I just painted the back of these black now just to see what they look like. And I just, like I said, just wanted to fill them and make it look like there's a lens in there. And that's it. Another common task on these efforts is to plug holes like this one in the smoke box here where the leads came out for the lamp and the class light here. And I used to just take like JB Weld or something and maybe CA like a piece of scrap styrene on the back to dam it up, and then, you know, I'd file it down. But I decided to try making a little part with a 3D printer, and wasn't critical like really what it looked like, but it's just, as you can see, there's a little 2 millimeter diameter nub sticking out of there, and the curvature of this piece is like the ID of the boiler. So here they are in place. Maybe a little overkill, but whatever. I'm just having fun playing with a 3D printer and seeing, you know, what it's capable of doing. So my next little task for it, though, is I do have to make number boards for the side of this headlight here. So that'll be next. And eventually, you know, I could just combine all these in one print on the next project and just print them all off in one shot. I mean, some of these prints are only, you know, 4 or 5 minute long jobs for the 3D printer, so it's been kind of fun, man. Well, I got one in, then I dropped the other, so I'm printing up another batch. This is probably one of the quickest prints ever. It's only like 2 minutes, and then I downscaled it to 95%, so should fit in easier. Alright, so I think I'm done with the front end. I've got the class lights taken care of. I got a nice little lens in them. I've got the holes plugged in the smoke box. And I wired up a 15 ohm resistor in series with a lamp just to dim it a little bit more, just to soften it up. Although you can't really tell from the video here because it's blowing out, but that's a lot dimmer than it was. And I've got our number boards in here, and I think I'm all set on the front end. I don't think there's much else I want to do. Next on the list is to go into the cab, and I was just going to glaze the windows and put some cab figures in there. And then what I'll probably do is just flip this over and check out the gearboxes, just lube them, and that's about it. And I think get ready to prep this for weathering. Oh, I almost forgot about my builder's plates. And it's really nice this came with the original spares pack, because my other one didn't. And sadly, my other one's, that 6131, isn't going to have its builder's plates. This did come with a spare. I wish it came with 2 spares, but this is all we got for now. So it's got to go here. And I made a little template for placing it. And I got a nice scale side elevation of this engine in this nice book. So I made a little template just to glue them both in the same spot consistently. And maybe someday if I find another set of these, I can do the 6131 also. Alright, I think that's the right spot. It's about 5.5 foot back from the front of the engine, and it looked like about 9 inches off this deck here, which is kind of deceptive because there's a step down here. So I think that's right. I'd go and do the other side, and I'm going to keep this template just in case I ever find the other builder's plates for the 6131. There's a brief ray of hope. I remember I bought this set of builder's plates from Taichi to do my J1A, and these are really nice, except it's kind of a interesting combination of locomotives on here. The Q2 is not on here though. Oh well. So I'm greasing up the gearbox, and I'm using lubriplate number 110 in a 14 gauge syringe, and these gears are like in mint condition. This thing was hardly ever run, so I'm just going through and doing the front first. And typically on these, I'll kind of drop those gearboxes, and if the worm gear and the shaft are kind of free, I just let them drop down, and you can see I can index the drives by moving the flywheel of the motor. And when I go to reassemble it, I'll pull the shaft back up with like a hook and re-engage the worm gear just very carefully, and I'll put, there's the hook there, and you can see I'm reaching in to pull the drive shaft back up, and you can see I'm just gingerly checking to see if we're meshing. And after this, I'll put the cover back on very loose. I'll get both screws in it and just kind of walk them in, and while I continue to move the flywheel. Now, if I was really slick, what I would do is drill and tap these gearbox covers for like an M2.5, so I could put a short screw in there as a grease plug, and then I could just use that syringe to apply grease to the worm and the main gear there without disassembling everything. Of course, I'd have to be careful. I'd have to choose a screw that's really short, you know. And you can see right here, I'm putting the gearbox covers back on, and I'm using a JIS screwdriver. If you have hardware in good shape and you use a proper JIS screwdriver, some of the smaller hardware will actually just stick to the screwdriver, and then you don't have to go chasing it when it falls off into the innards of your engine. So we're into the rear gearbox now, and this gearbox assembly is like a tower drive, and that brings the output of the motor down to the rear drivers, and then also has an output shaft that goes to that front gearbox. And this was kind of a predecessor of Third Rail's current quiet drive arrangement they have now with the printer belt and the pulleys that I showed you in that 5022 video. My J1A also has this tower drive system, and so do those decapods. So we're going to pull the boiler shell off here in a minute, and I'll show you as I get to the top of this gear train. And right here, I'm just getting my finger down in the firebox and just moving that flywheel around so I can index the main gear and just get some more lube on it. I can fit my finger down in this one. Not every engine I can do that with. You know, I'll just get like a rubber pencil eraser or whatever and try to bully the flywheel around if I can. But this just ensures I'm getting the whole gear lubed up properly. So again, I can't really stress enough to get the proper tools for working on this stuff, and that's a proper JIS screwdriver there. It's very cheap, and you can see that it almost retains the screws. If the screws aren't totally roached out from somebody, you know, just sticking their Stanley screwdriver in there, you can replace small hardware like this very nicely with a properly fitted JIS screwdriver. And I just continue to check the mesh of the gears by moving the flywheel. And you'll feel the gear train protest if you're moving that flywheel around and something isn't right. And then if you notice, I didn't fully tighten that gearbox cover. I just kind of gingerly did one side then the other, made sure it got down evenly. So it's worth taking some extra time and just making sure everything fits up right. Last thing you want to do is kind of wing it and then, you know, put full power to the motor and just grind up your worm gear and all that stuff. That would not be cool. So just take a little extra time at this point and just give it a feel, you know. As I'll oil all the journal bearings. There's some on the gearbox too, but they're usually, a lot of times I'll get lubed by the leakage of the grease. If you notice, pretty typical for third rails, there's usually some lateral slop in the end drivers. One other thing to check is these brake shoe hangers. You can bend them out of the way. You just really want to make sure they're not touching the rods at all. That's all. So with the boiler shell off, here's what that tower drive looks like at the rear of the engine. See, that top gear is completely dry. And you can see the rear gearbox is restrained. That's why when I took that cover off, it didn't drop. It's attached to the frame here pretty good. As you can see, the front one kind of floats. There's no restraint fore and aft. Sometimes you'll see like a strap that just keeps it from flopping back and forth, but it's probably this coupling which is pinned through. Oh, that looks like it looks like an Allen key set screw. Anyway, you could change your driver phasing that way if you wanted to. I got them 180 out right now. So yeah, these are Allen screws in here. Pretty cool. All right, let's get some lube in there. Where is it? Cool. I think that's gonna be good. I don't have to go too crazy on that. These little plain bearings look like they want some love. couple back here. There's one down low. I check this guy out. I think it's a sealed bearing. I don't think I have to worry about that. What a beast. It's got a pretty good sized flywheel on there too. I've been wanting to get a small machine shop going so I could turn my own flywheels. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Maybe someday. Want clean hands. This one's pretty easy to put back together. There's a lot of third rails where they got a nice bunch of surprises for you when you're trying to get boiler shells back on. Sometimes there'll be linkages you gotta pull apart, but this doesn't really have any. It's got these loose rod ends that don't connect anything, but on my M1A, on the other side, the power reverse, there was a, when I took the shell off that thing, I just did recently, I gotta do it again, I was fighting something getting that thing apart. Turned out there was a small linkage on the power reverse, but that's coming back to the workbench here pretty soon for some work. I'm gonna film that. So anyway, I got it on for the most part. There'll be a main screw up through the steam chest here, and then two right at the bottom of the cab here. So let me get that put together and show you some other stuff. One other curious thing about these third rail engines, they don't use any American SAE or anything, any kind of hardware like that. Everything is like JIS. And just recently I was kind of curious about all these little shoulder screws they use for you know, their trailing and pilot trucks and things like that. And turns out these little guys are like a DIN spec, and it's like DIN 943 or something. There's like a whole family of these DIN shoulder screws, and they've got all these crazy different dimensions and stuff. That's why you find that like almost no American screwdriver like fits these. So years ago, I was at a micro center, and I came across this like computer technician's toolkit, and it's all metric. So I use some of these nut drivers, you know, for a lot of the hardware on these engines. But it also has these interesting flat tip bits here, and they actually fit like perfect. In my line of work, I've been finding a lot of electrical cabinets and stuff. These tools are actually called like terminal tools and stuff like that. They're not even called screwdrivers. So it's just kind of interesting. You know, if you feel like your tools don't really quite fit in this hardware, there's probably a good reason for that, and it would probably benefit you to just go and look up all these different industrial standards. I do believe these are DIN, and I've got the tech sheet for them somewhere, but it's just another curious thing about these. So it's definitely worth just spending a few extra bucks every now and then and getting the right tools so you don't just scar all the hardware up. So there was actually a good tip on the OGR forum about filling in these number boards on your headlights using the actual cab number. And basically you just take a photo of your actual cab number and get it on your computer and then resize it and print it out. So I did them in Word here, and was able to make them for both the 6184 and the 6131, and it certainly looks better than plain glass. And then, you know, once I touch it up and weather over it, it'll blend right in. I think it'll look pretty nice, and a little nicer than my J1A poor man's number boards I did for that. So I thought that was a nice tip. And then I thought while I was at it, I'll be a wise guy, I found some photos of Q2 builder plates on the internet. I thought I'd try to resize them and print them out, but I didn't like the way they looked. I thought they were just too rough. So maybe someday I'll hassle Scott Mann at Third Rail about seeing if he's got these builder plates. So then while I'm at it, in the final stretch here. I'm gonna repaint both of the roofs to proper Brunswick green. I don't know why I never did it on the 6131. Maybe I didn't know at the time, but I'm gonna try to do that. And I'm gonna use up my precious polyscale Brunswick. And still waiting on some cab figures from Artista. I was hoping to get them by today, but they didn't show up yet. So we'll at least get the weathering done. All right. So I sprayed some Brunswick on these guys. I did have to add a little bit of reefer yellow, and I think the difference in shade here might actually be the difference in sheen that I'm looking at. So see what happens when we weather it, but that's kind of what I had to do in that J1A to get that red roof straightened out. Alright, so here's a 6131 with a corrected cab roof color. So it's Brunswick with just a couple drops of reefer yellow. And then, now that it's weathered over, there was a quick coat of grimy black and some minor dry brushing. I think it blends in pretty good. So, looking pretty good. I don't know why that never bothered me all these years, but I was just kind of getting the 6184 ready for weathering, and I thought, I might as well fix that, get them both done. Alright, so the moment is at hand, getting ready to do the weathering on the 6184 here, and I got it set up on the jack blocks. As you can see, it's running. So this is mainly just to shoot the drivers and get a little angle on the underside of the running boards and things like that. But right now it's got a single coat of flat clear on it, that and a tender, so we're ready to go. So it begins. I am shooting Model Masters Grimy Black at about 25 psi onto the drivers as they're running, and I try to get the drivers mostly from the bottom at first, and then as I work in toward the center, I'm trying to concentrate on getting all the rods and all the running gear kind of fairly consistently. I just don't want any blank spots. So you see I'm pulling back a ways and fogging it pretty good. At the same time, I'll hit the rest of the running gear. You see I'm moving out the trailing truck, and I'll try to get underneath the walkways and stuff. And right now I'm actually using the cab one to start and stop the driver so I can concentrate and just nail those spots I might have missed. At this point I'm running my airbrush and my cab one at the same time so I can start and stop the drivers and just puff some grimy black on spots that I missed on the drive gear and stuff. Here's the first initial vertical passes along the boiler sides with the grimy black, just to start laying some color down on it. And I do it kind of not so consistently. I'm trying to avoid doing like tiger stripes on it and stuff, and I'll just keep coming back. There'll be other effects added later on, but this is kind of where you start. And then sometimes I'll just, you know, run along the running boards and stuff too, but right now mostly vertical, and then we'll come back and concentrate on some other areas down back by the cab and areas like that. So, and then we'll repeat on the other side and then blow some grimy black across the top of the boiler later on. A little bit of dry brushing right now. Might as well do it before I break down the running track here. I hate having to set this up twice, so I try to get this done now. I just want to pick out some of the nice contours of the drivers. Nothing too heavy, just want to pop them a little bit. I also sprayed a little bit of like oil color on the valve gear, just a little bit. There used to be a color called oily black, polyscale made in acrylic, and it never quite made it to the Model Masters line. And then of course now it's completely gone, and my bottle's dried out. So, but I do like to get a little bit of oil on there. And if you notice, I think I got all the dry brushing done. The drivers pop just enough. They live in shadow most of the time. And I just wanted to get some of those details to come out. So once we're done with the running gear, it's time to move back to the boiler. So we have an initial coat of flat clear and some grimy black. And this kind of gives us the base for the final effects. And right now you can see there's a lot of boiler streaking going on that I've done with some AK weathering pencils. And this is what it looks like kind of before you blend it in. You can kind of buff it in with a stiff brush or maybe a damp brush with a little bit of water. And the idea is you kind of get it to that point. I take it out to the layout, look at it, bring it back into the shop. And what I end up doing is spraying grimy black over it again to kind of blend it all in so it's not so stark. And this is kind of the point where the weathering sort of takes on a speed increase of its own, because, you know, you've got your projects kind of coming together. It's coming to life. You know, it's the final phase. You know, all your hard work that you put into it is starting to pay off. So there's a little bit of nervousness, like you don't want to blow it at the last minute, you know, with some overdone weathering effect. But at the same time, it's really exciting to see it all come together. So if you notice, the boiler streaking is kind of blended in. It's not as stark as it looked in the shop. And here I'm showing some of the streaking effects I did. And even on the smoke box, I used some black weathering pencils to get the soot streaks, and then kind of oversprayed it with black. This project was a lot of fun because I got to try a lot of new stuff again. I always try to learn new things. There's so much tech available to us now on the hobby, like with the 3D printing and, you know, weathering products, you know, like those weathering pencils and things like that. But it's a lot of fun to learn all this stuff and then apply it almost immediately, you know, and then share your results, you know. Like I said, my 3D printing, I'm not trying to light the world on fire with it. I'm just trying to make some very useful parts that you may or may not ever see, but it adds to you know, a better quality effort. Well, we're gonna head this back into the shop, and I'm gonna take off the masking tape, install the cab glass, install the cab figures, probably just clean up a couple things here and there, and then get this ready for the run video, which I hope you guys will like. So thanks again for your patience and checking these videos out, and hopefully you learned something. I certainly learned a lot on this project, and hope to continue doing so. So we'll see you guys here pretty soon. I gotta get indexing on this turntable someday.